In this event, we hope to finish around about 6:30. We've got some excellent speakers who are going to help us to explore creative ways of ministering to older people in our communities. Julia Burton-Jones is the National Anna Chaplaincy lead, as well as in Rochester and Canterbury, and will outline some research findings about what we're learning. Angela Cayley and Jeremy Sharp will be speaking from Linking Lives about telephone befriending, and that's a scheme called Two's Company. And then Julia will be joined by Anna Chaplain, Judith Andrews from Silver Wholeness for Thanet to talk more about Anna Chaplaincy. Adrian Baltry from Canterbury Cathedral will be introducing Friendly Singing, an initiative for older people and their carers. And last but not least, Chris Chapman, who's an author and a spirituality consultant, will explore the subject of spirituality in older age. So those presentations should finish around about 5:50 p.m, at which point I'm going to introduce a section where we break out into groups with each of our speakers for about 15 minutes. And those of you who registered will have already expressed your preference for which group you're in, and you will hopefully magically, if all goes well, be invited to click on a blue link that will link you up with your breakout group for discussion. Now, following this, there's going to be about 20 minutes of questions and answers. So just a note about these. The Q&A is not going to be, the questions need to be typed into the chat box. So somewhere near the bottom of your screen, you'll find that icon that says chat. If you click on that, then you can type your question into the chat box, and then I will collate those questions and I will read them out and distribute them as appropriate to each of the speakers. So you don't need to verbalize your question, you just type it in and I'll do that job for you. Just a few housekeeping matters. We've got lots of people here today, which is great. So could I ask for you to keep your microphones muted if you're not speaking, so that we can keep background noise to a minimum. And these webinar presentations are being recorded. So if you don't want to be seen on the recorded version of the presentations, just switch off your video camera. The discussions in the breakout rooms are not going to be recorded. So you don't need to worry about that. So I think that's about enough from me at the beginning. I'll see you for the breakout rooms and then for the Q&A, and also for a word at the end. But as we think about ministry with older people, let's begin this webinar now with a prayer. Lord God, give us your grace now in this time of learning and sharing. Give grace to those in their older years and to all who care for them and minister to them. As our own loved ones grow older, we pray that in your love and mercy, you will help us to find creative ways to help them and draw each one of us into a closer fellowship with yourself. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. So now I'm going to hand over to Julia Burton-Jones.
Hello everyone, it's lovely that you're able to join with us this evening. I'm just going to share my screen so that you can see a few slides. All being well. Hopefully it's going to share in a minute. It's seems to have gone into a go slow mode, but we're nearly there. Okay, can you see the slides now, everyone? Is that okay? So I'm Julia Burton-Jones, and I have a role within Rochester and Canterbury Diocese, and also with the National Anna Chaplaincy team. And I'm just going to set the scene a little bit for some of the things that we're going to be thinking about this evening in terms of what we know about what's happening with older people in our communities, but also some of the impacts of COVID-19 on our older communities. So just a little snapshot of some of the demography, which I will return to in my session later on. We all know that we're ageing as a society, and in just 10 years, from 2009 to 2019, the numbers of people aged 85 and over increased by 23%, which is huge, isn't it? And we, in our two dioceses, have certainly plenty of rural and coastal areas, and those we know have higher older populations than the cities. A large proportion of people, particularly in their 80s and 90s, are living with dementia, and that's set to increase from the current estimate of 850,000 to 2 million people in the UK by 2050. So what's happened under COVID with our policy and practice and the experience of older people? So I think probably one of the greatest impacts has been on the care home sector, which has been heavily restricted and heavily impacted by the virus. And there's a big campaign at the moment to try and release some of the restrictions to allow relatives to visit as key workers because of the detrimental impact of lack of contact with family. But we know also the huge impact on staff and residents of the virus. The mortality rates are particularly high amongst people with dementia. 26% of deaths are amongst those with dementia, and age and vulnerability is a huge factor in COVID-19, as are the higher risks experienced by people from Black and Asian communities. Digital exclusion has been a big factor in allowing people to stay connected, and we know that 3.6 million people over 70 are not online. And that loneliness and cognitive decline has been experienced to a greater extent by older people. They're having treatments postponed, like routine hip replacement surgery, cataract surgery, because of the pandemic. And we've picked up that a lot of care home staff are feeling that they're really being neglected and abandoned during the pandemic. Lots of people are referring in articles in the press to ageism that's been really triggered by some of the impacts of the pandemic, where older people aren't receiving the same kind of care perhaps as younger people. And families are struggling to support older people because of the reduction in social care that's available. And of course, this pandemic has also led to tension between generations. So just very briefly, I've only got a minute left, so I won't be long. We have done 2 pieces of research which I can forward to you if you would like me to. We've done a review of Anna Chaplaincy in Rochester Diocese since lockdown, which found that only 15% of respondents felt that the spiritual needs of older people in their communities were well met. And on average, they were supporting 32 people per chaplain, and half of their ministry was with people who are not church members. It was fantastic to see how people were responding to the challenges of COVID-19, and you can see a quote there on the slide, which really reflects how people are thinking laterally and really opening up different lines of communication with older people and establishing very significant patterns of telephone contact particularly. And the second piece of research we did at the request of our bishops in Rochester Diocese was to look at how the church and Anna Chaplaincy were responding to the care home crisis. So again, you're very welcome to have a look at that piece of work. We had a couple of focus groups, and it really reinforced the distress and the difficulties faced by staff and the very great need for us to support them. Some of the difficulties of kind of gaining access to care home residents, because staff are working under such unprecedented pressure, but how much they appreciate expressions of support and practical help that churches have offered for them. So it's good to know that what we are offering, even though it's at a distance, is very much appreciated. So that's the end of my first presentation. I'm going to stop screen sharing now, and then hopefully you'll be soon hearing from our colleagues at Linking Lives about Two's Company. So I'd like to hand over now to Jeremy and Angela.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, I'm Angela Cayley from Linking Lives, and we also have Jeremy Sharp here as well, who is the National Director for Linking Lives. So we're really glad to be here tonight. I'm just going to hand over to Jeremy, who's going to present the first couple of slides. Oh, we can't hear you, Jeremy. No, we still can't hear you. Well, I'll start off while Jeremy's trying to get joined in. So Linking Lives UK is a national befriending charity, and we have we've been in operation for since 2012, and we currently have 32 face-to-face befriending projects. The vision is to reduce loneliness that's experienced by older people, and we work with churches to establish befriending projects in their locality. So why do we exist? We exist as a charity because of the vast issues of loneliness, and as Julia just pointed out, you know, that it's been enhanced during this time of COVID, but these figures are before COVID, and you know, there's, just picking out some, there's 1 million people aged 65 plus that are always or often they feel lonely, and the negative effects of loneliness can impact people's health and their mental well-being, and it's a really negative thing. And so Linking Lives has been created to address that through befriending projects. And Julia shared some statistics about life after lockdown. We just wanted to draw a couple of them out here. So 41% of adults reported feeling lonelier since the lockdown. 31% of adults often felt alone as they had no one to turn to. 33% of adults hadn't had a meaningful conversation within the last week. And 28% of UK adults worry that something will happen to them and no one will notice. So we wanted to share with you tonight a model that we have developed in response to COVID, which is a telephone befriending model. And the idea is that it's designed for churches to equip them to set up their own telephone befriending ministry in their own churches. So we have a 1-minute video that we just want to share with you now. There's no sound, Jeremy.
Shall I try?
Oh yes, you could do, yes.
Let me.
Thank you, Jenny. 60% there. Oh, I can hear it now.
Coming year, their priorities as churches.
78% of churches now identify loneliness as the biggest need in their communities, and 60% plan to respond to this need over the coming year. Linking Lives UK is helping churches to address loneliness through their telephone befriending tool called Two's Company. This tool provides the framework for churches to set up their own unique ministry, and we provide easy-to-use training, guidance and resources. Now, people who would otherwise be alone are in regular contact with a local church befriender. But the need is still great, and so we are looking for more churches who share our vision. To find out more about Two's Company, please contact Linking Lives at www.linkinglives.uk to request an information pack. Brilliant. So that just introduces Two's Company, which is a telephone befriending model. We have a Bible verse that underpins everything that we do, and it's from Psalm 68. A father to the fatherless, a defender of widows, is God in his holy dwelling. God sets the lonely in families. So we just wanted to share with you where our current Linking Lives projects are around the UK. In the top left-hand corner, you can see the various projects. The red dots were face-to-face befriending projects that have transferred to telephone at the minute, and the yellow telephones that you might just be able to make out are new Two's Company projects. And as you can see in this map of your local area, we don't have many, and we would love to partner with churches to establish some in this area. And I just wanted to share briefly some of the benefits of telephone befriending, especially at the moment. So firstly, it's a personal contact with an individual. You know, it's not watching a TV or watching something online. You're actually having a conversation with a person, and they are there just to listen to them. It builds links with the community, which has a vast value in terms of outreach and just establishing contact with people where you live. It helps to meet a vast need, and as we've talked about, there are many lonely people out there at the minute. It places a value on the individual, and I think that's just so important, especially from a Christian point of view, to show them that they're valuable to God as well as to ourselves. It opens the door to other ministries, so there's it gives the opportunity for signposting if there's other needs that come up, such as food or medication, but also hopefully as lockdown is eased, it gives the opportunity to invite them to other events that may be going on in the church, and it just builds those relationships up. And it's mutually beneficial. The people that are making the phone calls often enjoy it as well. So that's really positive. So just briefly, I'll really briefly go through this, what we offer to local churches. And we'll be talking and unpacking this more in our own breakout room. But we offer a clear framework, ongoing support, training, resources, and online events for coordinators, and guidance on transitioning to face-to-face befriending, if that is something that churches want to do after lockdown is eased. And so finally, if you'd like to find out more, the best place to find out more is by visiting our website, which is www.linkinglives.uk. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there's an inquiry form that you can fill out, and then I will get in touch with you. And also contact us, and we can arrange a Zoom call to discuss particular things, particular questions that you may have. So yeah, thank you very much for your time. And now I will hand you back to Julia.
Hello again, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen again. Hopefully you'll see our new presentation. I have a couple of slides towards the end where I'm going to hand over to Judith. So, but I'll start the presentation. And it's great to hear how Linking Lives have adapted to COVID. We are partners with them in the campaign to end loneliness, Christians Together Against Loneliness campaign nationally. So I am, as I said, the local lead in Kent, but also working in the national team. And Judith is a recently commissioned Anna Chaplain in Thanet, who's going to tell us a little bit about local initiatives. Just so that you're aware, we are actually part of the Bible Reading Fellowship, which people don't always realise. And those are the other programmes that we have at BRF: Living Faith, Messy Church, and Parenting for Faith, which you may have come across in other contexts. Just returning to some of the statistics about our ageing population, I wanted to reinforce some of those really quite dramatic statistics, which mean that it's time for us now to be thinking about how we respond. We've got an opportunity now to really think about how church life can be adapted for this current generation and the older people that we'll see, particularly the over 85s, who are set to treble in the next 30 years. We also are very aware of the fact that our congregations tend to be older, and in fact the proportion of people aged over 70 in the Church of England certainly, it is much higher. It's double the proportion in the wider population. So these are demographic changes which we as churches need to be addressing. So what is Anna Chaplaincy? What do we do, and where do we sit in terms of church life? Well, we are community-based. Anna Chaplains go to where people are, to those who are in need in their communities. They're not attached to one institution like a hospital, but they are perhaps visiting several different communities like care homes, but they're sent from their local church. But they're not just there for churchgoers, they're also there for older people outside of the church, for those of strong, little or no faith. Spiritual care is something that we all need, regardless of our beliefs. We also work with the family carers of older people and with their professional carers and provide chaplaincy to them as well. We aim to be very person-centred, to start where the person is, and non-judgmental, to come alongside them wherever they are in their life's journey. And wherever possible, we aim to be ecumenical. We work with churches of all denominations. So if you're an Anna Chaplain, your ministry could include a variety of different things. And the essence of it is to walk alongside the older person. And that's why I've shown the image there of a tandem. There's something called the Purple Bicycle Project, which is another project offering spiritual care for older people. And their logo is a tandem, which I think is an excellent metaphor for what we're trying to do. We're really trying to give sensitive care to people who are often experiencing difficult times of loss and bereavement, and revisiting perhaps some of the difficult experiences earlier in their life and trying to make peace with those events that have happened. So you might be going to people in their own homes, you might be a presence at community groups like dementia, friendly cafes, or as we said earlier, you might be going to care homes and other retirement communities to visit individuals or to lead a service of worship. So you're probably thinking, why Anna? Well, you probably realise when you think about it that there's a very well-known Anna in the New Testament in the Gospel of Luke, and it was the widow, the prophetess Anna, who recognised the baby Jesus as the Messiah, after whom our ministry is named. And this really highlights the tradition of older people having prophetic voices. It recognises the wisdom that they have to impart and the life lessons they have to share. And she is an inspiration to us in that she was really steeped in spiritual disciplines. She never left the temple but worshipped there with fasting and prayer night and day, speaking of redemption to anyone who would listen. So Anna chaplains can be lay people or ordained. They can be male or female, despite the name Anna. They are paid and voluntary, although I must say the majority in Kent are volunteers. And their gifts are recognised in this ministry, and they're sent out and supported by their local church. They're linked to the Bible Reading Fellowship, and they commit at least a day a week to their ministry. We also have Anna friends who work with Anna chaplains very often, and they might commit a couple of days a week to their ministry and tend not to have the leadership responsibility that the Anna chaplain would have. So the history of Anna Chaplaincy is that it started with Debbie Thrower, the broadcaster, who you may have seen on the television, who was appointed to a project in Alton in Hampshire and had so many requests for shadowing that she approached BRF to take on the work as a national initiative, which they duly did. And we now have a network of 150 Anna chaplains and people in equivalent roles from as far afield as Orkney and Guernsey in the north and the south of the UK. In Rochester Diocese we have 60 Anna chaplains and Anna friends, and Canterbury Diocese has just appointed its first 2 Anna chaplains last September, of whom Judith is one. So we are looking constantly at ways of developing what we do, and there's a new virtual course that's being piloted at the moment for Anna chaplains and Anna friends in Kent, which we hope will also be offered in the national network. And I just wanted to also point out that we have Judy in our gathering today, who has been doing work on lip reading and older people, and is wanting to host a lip reading class for older people who are looking at learning how to lip read Bible vocabulary. So please do contact us if you want to hear about that. You can read about it on the Anna Chaplaincy blog, where I've recently written a blog. So just very briefly in closing before I hand over to Judith, Anna chaplains are appointed and authorised by their local church or churches together. We've just launched Anna Chaplaincy under the banner of Churches Together in Cumbria this past weekend as an example. We're ecumenical and community based. They're an older persons advocate and champion in the wider community, and we reach out to people of strong, little or no faith. So the next slide, I'm handing over to Judith, who's just going to give you a brief summary of what's happening in Thanet for the last 2 slides.
Thank you, Julia.
Oh, good.
Yes, so I was commissioned as one of the first 2 Anna chaplains in the Diocese of Canterbury last September, and that was a great privilege. I've always felt that that Anna ministry for me is a community-based ministry rather than being church-based, and also with the connections that I've made in Thanet, both community and church and across churches, we come up with a bit of a plan of how we would like to support ministry, spirituality across Thanet, and that is SWIFT, which stands for Silver Wholeness for Thanet. Together we've come up with a 5 elements of SWIFT, which is soul care, which is aimed at care home ministry, supporting both residents and caring staff, especially as Julia mentioned earlier, that they feel maybe undervalued, and there's been a very, very difficult time for everyone involved in care homes. Hope services, which are, and I apologise for using this phrase, dementia-friendly services. So hoping that making our churches welcoming and friendly, and liturgy, appropriate liturgy. Bereavement ministry, end-of-life ministry. Befriending, so it's great to see linking lives here, and also parish nursing. So those are the 5 elements that we planned at the beginning of the year to spread and share throughout Thanet, and I'll touch on that more, or go into more detail in the breakout room. So that's it for me, and I'd now like to hand over to Adrian.
Hello, first question, can you hear me? that looking good? Okay, excellent. Hi, my name's Adrian Baltry. I'm one of the assistant organists at Canterbury Cathedral. I'm also a trustee of the Friends of Canterbury Cathedral. And prior to working at Canterbury Cathedral, I worked in Rochester Cathedral, where I met Julia, and we started a bit of work together. And prior to that, I've been a parish church organist, probably for most of my working life. And I've also worked in a school. So I guess over the last however many years, I have an observation on the church plant, really, as an opportunity for community singing, in that you have a body of volunteers and skills and experience within the church community. You have a fabulous resource in terms of the space and hopefully facilities to entertain and care. I mean, I'm talking kitchen, toilets, etc., and heating. I know not every church, but a lot of churches do. And of course, the other thing is singing, is that when you go to church, apart from at the moment, we expect people to join in and sing. When I moved to Kent 10 years ago, I went to work for a charity which was looking at singing for health and well-being, particularly in older people, particularly people living with dementia, but a number of other vulnerable conditions, I think is a way of putting it. And there was a lot of research into how singing and health and well-being go together and can help. And so I was over the years been thinking that possibly the church plant is a very good way of promoting singing for well-being. So as a result of this, my thought strain, I decided that I would approach the Friends and set up the friendly singing, which would be for, and we thought very carefully about who we'd invite or try and attract, and we aimed for older people and their carers. We didn't want to call it a dementia thing particularly, because we were just very conscious of labeling. And actually my experience with a similar activity is that what we're looking for is a form of normalization within an activity. So we went for older people and their carers. We set it without St Paul's Church in Canterbury, without the cathedral, if you see what I mean, without the cathedral wall in St Paul's Church. And the idea about it, that it would be a social, participative and fun. There would be tea and biscuits, a chance for conversation, but there'd also be a 45-minute singing workout led by me on a variety of repertoire. And when we started in January, this is this year, we had 17 people attend, and that was great. I was very happy with that at the start. But in February, suddenly we had 40 people. And in March, we had another 40 people attend, and 20 of those were different from the last group. So we started to already hit some quite considerable numbers. And certainly in the second two, we had people who were living with early diagnosis dementia, and they appeared on their own. They came on their own. But we did indeed also have some couples and one living with quite severe onset dementia and their carer. And we had a very happy time, and it was a lot of fun, and I could see that this was going to grow. And our intention at this point is, if we were successful, and it was proving that we were going to be, that we would invite other church communities to come and observe what we were doing, and with a hope to helping them set up something similar in their church. And then lockdown happened. And so we had to think of a new way of engaging, and that's more difficult. So what I have explained thus far is, I hope, something that can be considered for post-COVID, when some sense of normality is returned to us. But in between times, I've also been working on YouTube, where we have featured our very own Jonathan Arnold, who has sung for us, and we've also had Elvis come and join us, actually, unbelievably. But Elvis, if you look at one of the friendly singings, Elvis is indeed there. He was in Thanet touring, and so, which was a lot of fun. But the whole point of the virtual videos that we did on YouTube were so people could join in, so the words appeared at the bottom. However, I've also been working online with Zoom with my choirs, and I think there is scope for working with folk through via the Zoom medium, and this is obviously something that we can discuss in the breakout group a little more, as well as what we had originally intended, which was the group setting in a church hall or the church body itself. However, I don't know if any of you have experienced what it's like to sing on Zoom, because I think it would be no bad thing, as since we're 35 minutes in, that we all sang something together. So we're actually going to do that, and I'm going to show you. So my technology and my presentation goes to the 19th century, and that's not the guitar, but the lovely piano that's sat there. And if you can imagine, this is the kind of thing that you could do if you got a community on Zoom. And where I've chosen, and of course, if I was really clever, I could have put the words up for you, and that's something we can discuss. But I've chosen the Lord of the Dance. It just needs to be the chorus, because dance there wherever you may be. And I don't know where all of you are, so that seemed appropriate to sort of say that. And here we are. So you can stay on mute, that's fine. So the only person that are hearing you are the people in your house or wherever you are, and hopefully they'll come peering into the screen wondering what's going on, and then they can join in. Okay, so let's give it a go. Dance, dance there wherever you may be. I am the Lord. You know it, and if you don't know the words, sing the tune, just la la la. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Dance there wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, said he, and I'll lead you all wherever you may be, and I'll lead you all in the dance, said he. All right, let's do it one more time, but a little bit higher. Here we go. 2, 3, 4. Dance then wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, said he, and I'll lead you all wherever you may be, and I'll lead you all in the dance, said he. So, Zoom singing is singing, but not as we know it, and it's choir singing, but not as we know it. But it is something, and what I encourage my choirs to do is to really go for it with their singing, even if they're just on their own, because singing is good for you, and you will feel better for singing, and it is something to be encouraged. So it is difficult on your own, I know, but bearing in mind this is the situation we find ourselves in, this is something that we can add to our breakout meeting, which we're going to talk about shortly, but also we can think beyond and how you might want to set up something, and so that's really what we're here to discuss. So I am looking forward to meeting some of you a bit later, but now it is my turn at 17:39, oh no, 17:40, look at that, to introduce Chris Chapman to talk about spirituality in older life. Thank you for listening.
Oh, I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me? Great, that's good. Hopefully there's look, there we are. So I'm going to talk about spirituality in older age. Sometimes when we think about growing older, we associate it with problems, with difficulties, and they're part of the picture, all those challenges. But spirituality, in terms of thinking about who we are, what we live for, where we find meaning, older age can really be the time when those questions come to the fore. If we look at this picture, maybe some of us can recognize something of ourselves here. You know, all those rings, all those years, and maybe we're a bit more weathered than we used to be. And there's a few cracks there I can see. But spirituality, those questions about meaning, those questions about who we are, who God is, what we live for, I think older age is the time when those questions really come to the fore. Because life is in sharper focus. We know, don't we, that, you know, life is finite. It doesn't go on forever. Times I'll read that book one day, and then you realize you're never going to get round to reading that book. You know, life is a limited thing. So that sense of time is limited, what really matters? And I think lockdown has brought that home to us, how relationships matter, how our relationship with God matters. I think too, in older age, maybe we begin to know our patterns more and God's patterns. It's a bit like when I go walking in the woods near us, and often I get lost, but then I recognize I've been lost here before, so I know exactly where I am. And, you know, our patterns can be a bit like that. You know, when we wander off track, we get to know ourselves, how we work, sometimes how we trip up, but also we get to know something of God and how God is there for us within those times. I remember someone who was involved in pastoral care ministry who said that when she retired, that was the first time that she became free from being self-absorbed. She really felt she had the space to receive other people and be alongside them. And maybe too, that goes along with our ability in older age to be more present. It's something children are good at, you know, to be really absorbed in the moment. And I think in older age, that can be an ability we recapture. So being able to be present to our children, grandchildren, a stranger, to God, to creation. And with all of that, perhaps we're more familiar with mystery. Life is not told in straight lines. It's much more grayer, perhaps, than we once thought. There are a lot more questions around, sometimes in older age, and particularly in relation to our faith. We can have sort of doubts and questions. And sometimes some people think of that as a kind of lack of faith, but actually it's the heart of faith. We're moving more deeply into God. And that goes with perhaps again something that's been part of the movement of this time, of learning to let go in the face of mystery, in the face of stuff we can't understand and control, and let God. So just thinking about some examples in the Bible, we've got Abraham and Sarah, who in their older age set off on an adventure. Abraham sets off for a land he does not know. He's not that picture of the older person who's set in their ways. It's time to explore. T.S. Eliot in a poem said, old men should be explorers, old men or old women. We know that time is short, so it's time to stop playing safe. it's time to give ourselves to what matters. And we recognize with greater focus, perhaps in older age, the centrality of relationships with the people who really matter and with God. So we set off on a new adventure. Older age is often a time for letting go. This is an image of Moses, who had to do a lot of letting go. He doesn't look terribly happy about it, I don't think. But, you know, Moses who led the people through the wilderness, and then right to the verge of the promised land, where he had to lay hands on his successor, who would take him across the river, take them across the River Jordan. So as we grow older, there is a good deal of letting go. You know, letting go roles we once had, the children leaving home and then they bounce back and they're there again, and then they leave home again. Letting go of responsibilities that we had. And that's difficult stuff. Letting go sometimes that is associated with health. And yet in this letting go, there can be a deeper movement of trust in God, letting go into God. Older age too is a time to meet mystery. This is the figure of Nicodemus, who goes to seek Jesus at night. He's someone in his older age who feels, I know how things work, but he feels these unfamiliar stirrings in his spirit. So he goes to seek Jesus, and Jesus tells him he must be born again. Can an old man go back into his mother's womb, he says. You hear the sound of the wind. You do not know where it comes from or where it is going. And that is how it is with the Spirit. So I think older age can make us more alive and perhaps more accepting of mystery. That our certainties perhaps crumble. We're more able to see the greys. We're more able to cope with not being able to manage things or control things. And then older age is a time where perhaps we grow in that ability to be present, or at least the invitation to do so is there. So like Anna and Simeon, we heard about Anna before, and somehow when all those people came into the temple, it was Anna and Simeon who recognized this young family and their child, and what this coming meant, who these people were, who this child was. So that sense of older age is a time when we can learn afresh to be present. Prayer is a way of practicing presence, the presence of God. Every moment rich with encounter. We look back in our lives, we can see God's working. And looking forward, we maintain that hope and expectation. So growing older, as the rings get wider and more, it's a time to go deeper. Perhaps that's the invitation and the challenge. It's not an inevitable fruit of growing older, but the invitation is there. And perhaps age itself and our awareness of finiteness of life makes us more alive to that invitation. Finally, I used to work for the Diocese of Southwark, and when I was there, I was part of a small group called SAGE, which was a spirituality and aging group. And we used to put on workshops and retreats and provide resources for helping older people, supporting older people in exploring the spiritual challenges of growing older. And I think that group still exists, and there are groups, similar groups in other dioceses. So perhaps if there are questions about that, or aspects of growing older and the spiritual challenges it presents, again, the breakout groups are there. So now I'm going to hand back to Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Chris. And thank you to all our speakers. And now we're going to go into breakout groups where you can speak to our speakers. There are 5 groups representing the 5 presentations we've had. So there's Silver, Wholeness for Thanet with Judith. There's Anna Chaplaincy with Julia. Two's Company with Angela and Jeremy. Friendly Singing with Adrian, and Spirituality in Older Age with Chris Chapman. Most of you are named and therefore will be allocated your breakout room. Some of you are not named and therefore it won't be quite so easy to allocate you straight away. Don't worry, stay online, stay where you are, and Jennifer Ross, our technical wizard in Rochester, will help you navigate you to the right breakout group. Okay, and we'll be back in the room together at 6:05, and you should receive a countdown when your breakout room is coming to an end, and you click on the link to go back into the plenary session, which will be the question and answers, and I'll be reading out the questions from the chat box. Hope you had a good time in your breakout rooms. And now we come to the Q&A, which will go on until about 25 past. And in the chat box, I've got some lovely questions here. So the first one is for Two's Company. How does this differ from a well-organized church-based phoning setup organized from within a church? Is it just that it is community focused? So Angela?
Well, Jeremy has his microphone working now, so I'm wondering
Jeremy,
if he would like to answer.
So yeah, I think, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, great. So yeah, we see it really as a really good opportunity for churches to reach those on the margins of society through really referrals. So that the system enables us to get referrals from social workers, social prescribers who are quite key people in the local communities now. So it's really that link between the church and those in the community that otherwise would be quite hidden. And that's really where that's really been our motivation for the number of years that we've been running now.
okay, thank you. And a question again for Linking Lives. How do you overcome problems with deafness when you are calling older people? And do the older people have to ask to be included in the scheme?
Yeah, we do need the permission of everyone that is receiving a regular call, so we make sure that we do get that from a very early stage. As far as deafness is concerned, there's no really easy answers to this. It's something that has come up on a regular basis. If anyone's got any ideas on that, then we'd be pleased to hear them. But yeah, it is a real challenge, and I think it really just highlights the situation that people with hearing loss and other disabilities, that it's had a huge impact on them, particularly during COVID. Yeah, it's not an easy one, I'm afraid.
Right. And the question about older people having to be asked, I think you've answered, haven't you? Have to ask to be included in the scheme. I think you've answered, Jeremy. Yeah. Okay, good. The next question is, I think it's for Adrian. Oh no, a question for Anna Chaplaincy. How do I inquire about undertaking an Anna Chaplaincy training? I know this is from Peter Brown and he says it's been answered in the breakout room, but other people might want to know. So Julia, maybe?
Yes, I guess it would be contacting me if it was local to Kent, and it would be contacting the national Anna Chaplaincy team with their email address if it was beyond Kent. So my email address is julia.burtonjones@rochester.anglican.org. But I'm sure you'll be sent our email.
Yeah. We'll
Addresses
send out
afterwards.
everybody's contact details, not yours, participants, but the speakers, and some stuff afterwards. But I'll tell you about that later. So you will be kept in touch with what's going on. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think this one is for Adrian and for anyone else. Given the close connection between mental health and singing, and the apparently benign report which the research group on COVID and singing are in the process of publishing, could there be a case for Anna chaplains to bring pressure to bear on the national church to relax the ban on singing in churches?
Right. I think I'm half of the answer to this one. The report, I'm guessing, is the Declan Costello one that was that was done. It was interesting because it was looking singularly at singing as an individual. I haven't read it in its entirety, I must confess, but I read the summary, which seemed to suggest that the louder you sing, the more you spread aerosols. So sing quieter. I can say that choirs, every time we've tried to get the choirs back on track in the last month or so, we've always received a setback because the goalposts change. But I know it seems now that the latest government guidance, which came out today, is allowing choirs to continue to meet. So on the basis of that, I think I would certainly want to encourage the church to consider how congregational singing could return, even if it was quietly. But I don't know how the Anna chaplains, how Julia might feel on this in particular. It's an interesting point. I think it's a question that could be asked.
Yes, I mean, it is quite difficult to challenge the COVID guidance, and the Church of England is treading quite a tricky path, I think, of not wanting to be too confrontational. And certainly with the care homes, we want to be supportive of them and not seem to be too in contradiction of what they're doing. I'm not sure that I can add an awful lot to what you've said, Adrian. I think if we can get people singing, I think it's of huge benefit to older people, especially those with dementia. But there are some really brilliant music initiatives that we can really publicise, and I think if you can get people to use Adrian's videos, they are absolutely brilliant. If you can get people to, in care homes and family carers at home, to put the videos on, I think singing at home, encouraging people to sing at home, is safe, isn't it? Rather than, you know, getting into maybe some murky territory where we're asking people to take risks.
I think there needs to be a lot more research done on group singing, probably for a church for the Church of England to say, having a congregation of 100, 150 or whatever, in whatever building you are, to sing. That is a different set of research to what they were researching in this particular project. So it is caution, but choirs, small groups of choirs, small groups in choirs rather, are able to sing with a mask, is what we do. And I had a choir practice last night, and the people singing really, you know, mezzo piano. It was actually a fabulous sound.
Thanks very much indeed. And we can send out all the links to your videos, can't we, Adrian?
Yeah, sure, of course.
With this stuff. Okay, great. The next one along is not so much a question, but it's a statement that the people might want to respond to. It is from Alison Ward. It strikes me that what we're talking about here is connections, that the way to reach older people depends on what they will respond to. As the young engage with God and community in different ways, so do the old. So some will want to sing, some to see people on a computer screen, some to talk to someone on the phone, others just to sit in silence. So it's about finding out what the connection is that will work with our valuable older people who have so much to contribute. I don't know if anybody wants to come back on that or to endorse it.
Just to agree, really.
Okay, great. The next one I think maybe for Chris. Lots about older people, but what age are older people? I'm interested in the saga folk who are 55 plus.
Yeah, well, certainly when we had a group in the previous diocese I worked for, it was that we made it a self-defining group. So a number of those who were part of this working group exploring what it was like growing older, what different perspectives came, what spiritual challenges and opportunities came with that. A number of them were around retirement age, some were older. And I think the challenges and the invitations of growing in years, they come at different stages for different people. But certainly I think that transition from, around about 60, 65, when you're beginning to slow down in your work life and there are questions about identity and who am I and what do I live for, that can be a really important catalyst for thinking more seriously about what really matters and who I am and where is God. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. There's a question now for Judith. How would you suggest the local church to most wisely approach a care home to introduce some sort of visiting ministry during or post-COVID?
I think at the moment, visiting is still not, we're not able to visit, but I'm working on a pack that will go to a care home that's got a care pack, but it's directed at the caring staff rather than the residents. And that will include chocolates, biscuits, that type of thing, an offer of an activity. It's important not to come across as being patronising. It's been 6 months since there has been any connection with local churches. But that's what I'm working on at the moment. So if that person could get in contact with me, then I'd be very happy to share. There's been some advice coming out of BRF on good ways to connect with care homes, and that's what I'm working through.
Thanks, Judith. Yeah. There's a comment from Jodie Sullivan here about writing to local people. So it's not the same as a phone call, but I write to a small number of parishioners who struggle with the phone, and we exchange letters, good old-fashioned letters in an envelope. Does Angela or Jeremy want to comment on that, whether that's a befriending thing that is part of the setup there at Linking Lives?
Absolutely. It's lovely that that Jodie's brought that up, actually, because it's something that we have in the pipeline at the moment, and that we're piloting, is actually the idea of a pen pal project. So at the moment we're in contact with a care home locally and also a primary school, and we're trying to work out the process that would need to take place in order for them to be linked to each other and paired in the same way that telephone befrienders are, and then to enable the the communication from the children to the older people, and obviously, and vice versa. And obviously, you know, that's lovely because it's intergenerational as well. So there's so much learning and so much experience that can be shared there. And yeah, so that's in the pipeline at the minute. We're just piloting that. And if anyone's interested in and wants to find out more about that, then just email through the website. Just make an inquiry through the website and put a little note in there that that's what you'd like to find out about, and we'll put you on a mailing list, and then as we have some more information we can send that out.
Thanks very much indeed. Okay, we've got another question for Judith here. How did you decide on your 5 priorities in your ministry? Would love to see Anna Chaplaincy in Sheffield at the moment. This is from Helen. It's a blank slate. Interested to hear about your experience.
I worked with a member of a non-Church of England church, Angela, and together we just kept meeting and discussing, and where did we feel God that was calling us with our shared experiences, and ended up with those 5. It was as simple as that, I think. I think it's just the, you know, the gifts that God has given us and that's where He wants us to use them.
Great, thanks, Judith. Just 3 minutes to go on this, but a couple of comments about a pen pal scheme run by Tendring Elder Care, which involves writing to them, passing on the letters, and older people love getting letters. So there's some support for that there. A question from Marion: has anyone asked a care home manager to ask those residents who have no family or friend who visit whether they would like someone from a local church to become their nominated visitor during the COVID pandemic? Can anyone answer that from a care home perspective?
We are certainly thinking about these key issues, but we haven't actually come up with a way of doing it yet. But we're aware that the visiting restrictions are particularly difficult for people who don't have close family to visit them, which constitutes quite a lot of people, and for whom their church friends may be their main source of support. But it's something we are looking at, but we haven't done anything. I wouldn't say we've asked any care homes yet. We are feeling a need to get that personal support into, and individual support into care homes, particularly where there's a link with the church, where residents have had that link with the church or been part of the service.
Right, thank you. And then a related question really, if we can't access care homes, is there any merit in building a network with families of those in care homes, especially partners, so those people who are at home?
It's very difficult to connect with those people, though, isn't it? Unless you got access to those individuals, then how are you going to find them?
Yeah.
You do have to be, we do have to be very aware of safeguarding and data protection. You know, we need to be very, very sensitive in how we approach this.
And we have to work really closely with the staff, and we are equally committed to their well-being and their spiritual care as we are their residents. So we've got to tread very carefully. We are guests in the care homes. You know, we're there by invitation, so we have to build trusting relationships. One of the difficulties for Anna Chaplains is where there's rapid turnover of senior staff, the manager, the administrator, there is the activities coordinator, which can happen because if you've established a good link and they trust you, and then the person moves on, you can sometimes feel like you're starting from scratch. But we do have to be very sort of humble in our approach and supportive of them and what they're trying to do. But we really do feel for the relatives at the moment, and a story that was told to me by one member of our team was heartbreaking, of a man with dementia who was convinced his wife must have gone off with another man because he wasn't visiting her, and would he, you know, maybe he should divorce her. And had the wife known this, she would have been absolutely devastated. And the Anna friend, who's also on the staff of the home, had to spend a lot of time reassuring him. But this is one case. This must be happening countless times, and the emotional labour of the staff having to reassure someone that their family do still love them is absolutely colossal, isn't it? This is a really burning issue for us at the moment, how we address some of these tensions of the social and emotional needs of residents and their families versus the risk of COVID. It's a really tricky one.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Just on that subject, there's a useful message in the chat box from Helen from Sheffield that Age UK Sheffield has started a Facebook group. If you want to know more about that, you can contact Helen on oaksandacornssheffield@gmail.com. And Marion has said she's written an article about how churches can support older people during the pandemic, and that's going to be out in the Church of England newspaper. So just have a look at the bottom of the chat box. That's Marion at marionshord.co.uk. So you can see all that in the recorded message afterwards. So it's time to draw the Q&A to a close and to draw this webinar to a close. Thank you so much to our speakers, to Chris and Julia, to Judith, Jeremy, Adrian and Angela. Thank you so much to them. Thanks to Jennifer for the technical wizardry, and for those other people who've helped to prepare for this: Peter Ingram's, Karen Adams, Marion Hambrook, and to everyone for attending. We hope you found it useful and interesting, and we'll be in touch shortly by email to all of you with the link of the recorded version, and we'll also be sending you other information and links that might be useful, along with the speakers' contact details, and they're happy to be contacted in the future if you would like to contact them. So as we come towards the end of this exploration of reimagining ministry with older people, I think it's been really interesting. I found it fascinating myself. We'll offer one another to God's care, and we offer one another to God's service today, and especially as we think about those who are older in our community. So let's just finish with a short prayer. Dear Lord, as we remember all those who are precious to us in our society, especially those in later life, we pray that by your grace and strength, we may continue to care for and minister to all those in need. And we pray this in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much, everybody, for this event, and we look forward to more contact with you all in due course. Thank you.